First of all, I'd just like to thank Saul and the CannaTech team for a fantastic couple of days here in Cape Town, and for the great work that they've done over the last couple of years in really building this platform and fostering global collaboration. So massive thank you to Saul and the team. By way of introduction, my name is Sibusiso Xaba. You know, the surname is a click, and it's a challenge to everyone here to learn how to say that before flying back home. So well done, Jim. Good push. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ACA Group, or Africa Cannabis Advisory Group. We are an investments, advisory, research and distribution company focused on the Africa cannabis opportunity. Prior to starting ACA, I was an investment banker in the UK for 8 years. I focused primarily on the African market in the UK. And a significant portion of my specialization during that time was helping African governments, corporates, infrastructure projects raise capital. So everything from sort of $5 million tickets all the way up to $1 billion transactions. I'm originally from Eswatini, or Swaziland, which is a small landlocked country that is in South Africa and Mozambique. Not much happens in my part of the world. It's a very remote part of Africa. But this is a picture of Umhlosheni. The one thing I can guarantee you is that if you look at some of the green in the background, you'll find some of the best cannabis strains in the world there. And so many sort of families from where I'm from have relied on cannabis for decades in the way of economic income. And so in many ways, my decision to come back to Africa and to go into the cannabis sector has been very much going back to my roots. So today, I'm going to unpack a little bit about what I think is required for Africa in terms of some actionable points from mainly a policy perspective in order to really be able to draw a critical mass of capital that's really going to be needed to unlock the potential of the cannabis sector. So we all know that Africa has many advantages when it comes to cannabis cultivation, the large amounts of arable land, the great microclimates, affordable labor costs, and so forth. However, these advantages in and of themselves are not going to draw the required capital to really to move the needle in the African cannabis story. And so, and there's a couple of reasons for that. I'll just touch on two. Number one, South America. South America has many of the comparable advantages that Africa has, except it's much closer to North America and has stronger trading relationships with North America. So it's a much easier place for cannabis capital to find a home. And number two, the recent sell-off in cannabis stocks that we've experienced over the last couple of months, I think have really changed the psychology of the cannabis investor. I think cannabis investors are a lot more focused on fundamentals. They're a lot more focused on route to market, and they're a lot more focused on the regulatory environment under which cannabis companies will be operating. We see in Canada how that's hampering growth and development of the sector in the way of distribution via retail outlets. And so all of this will be under a lot more scrutiny, and that's why the stakes are a lot higher now for Africa to get this right. So I'm going to be discussing five points on what exactly Africa needs to do to get this right. Number one, bold and smart policy, which will be the foundation for investment and trade roadmaps. Number two, intra-Africa trade and integration. Number 3, community conscious business models. Number 4, cannabis applications solving African problems. And last, finding a home for the black market. So I think a lot of countries right now are actually at a great advantage in terms of entering the cannabis sector and setting policy and frameworks for the sector to succeed. We have a broad range of case studies, live case studies from across the world on what has worked in the way of legalization, where are some of the challenges and roadblocks, and African countries are in a unique position right now to calibrate all that information toward the local setting and set policy that will help them leapfrog the early stage of legalization. And one idea that we've been discussing in depth with a number of governments is around having a centralized cannabis front office unit of sorts. This unit would be responsible for research, it would be responsible for collaboration, strategic partnerships externally, and it would also be responsible for working with the various ministries within government and helping them draft smart policy for the sector. Number 2 is around regional integration and trade. So according to the Brookings Institute, only about 20% of African exports are to Africa. This number is around 60% in Asia and 70% in Europe. So it's very clear that Africa is punching well below its weight when it comes to unlocking its own economic value. One really encouraging development in this area is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which came into force in May 2019. This will create the world's largest single market, 1.2 billion consumers, 2.3 trillion in GDP value, and 55 countries all under one single economic trading zone. Now, outside of the natural or expected benefits of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement around comparative advantage, production and value chain processes throughout the continent, this certainly makes Africa a great market to target in the way of selling and developing products. Thirdly, community-conscious business models. I think over the last sort of 10 to 20 years, the world has gone through an evolution in how companies are run and managed and what defines success. We've seen global inequality cause massive unrest throughout the world, from protests to civil unrest, to coups, and to protectionist policies that have been seen as a means to sort of push back on some of the consequences of inequality. And so the businesses of the future, and particularly in Africa, are the ones that are going to be able to have community buy-in and to really have the community in which they operate in fully invested in that business. And so there's many examples of how this translates from equity participation at a community level to benefits such as healthcare, education, and the like. A case study of where this has been done exceptionally well on the African continent is in Botswana, a company called Debswana, which is a joint venture between the government of Botswana and De Beers diamond mines. The company has done exceptionally well in having almost complete buy-in from the population in Botswana, and particularly the communities where it operates. It was the first company to offer ARVs to HIV-positive patients and their families, and it's built extensive networks of schools and hospitals where the companies operate, and has won numerous international awards for its great work in this regard. And so I think on the cannabis side, this is a great model for us to think around in terms of how we can apply it to Africa. Fourth, I'd like to also just talk a little bit about the applications of cannabis in the African context and how we can focus on using cannabis to solve African needs. And I think the previous panel also touched on this point, in that the typical business model that we see at ACA Group when we speak to entrepreneurs is, the dream of being able to export oils to Europe. But very often we hear a little about, in the way of interest, to target the domestic economy on the industrial hemp side and also on the medical side. And so the African Development Bank has actually set aside north of 24 billion itself and a few international partners to deploy into the agri sector in Africa. And so our view is that a significant portion of that, or definitely some portion of that, is expected to go towards the cannabis sector. So the entrepreneurs that are positioning for this for that trend, I think will do really, really well focusing on the domestic economy. Lastly, finding a home for the black market. I think the cannabis cultivation is ingrained in the social fabric of many African communities. It's similar to where I'm from, in Plosheni, in Swaziland. There are millions of other Africans who have depended on this crop for sustenance. And so finding ways in which the black market can integrate into the legal market is of utmost importance. The benefits are not only economic for those communities and villages, but I think you also have a situation where individuals come into the formal economy in the way of having IDs, access to banking, credit, and the like. And further down the line, I think the recreational market in the way of branded products and tourism will also be another advantage. So to conclude, Africa has done exceptionally well over the last 10 to 15 years to go from a continent dependent on aid to a continent that has 6 out of 10 of the fastest growing economies in the world. However, a lot of this growth hasn't been inclusive, and I think the big challenge for Africa will be lifting millions of individuals out of poverty and bringing them into the real economy. The cannabis market gives us a real and tangible opportunity to do that. It's going to take effort from everyone in this room. On the Africa side, I know it's, especially in the private sector, it's an uphill battle at the moment. I have many kind of therapy sessions with some of our clients at ACA Group about what exactly it's going to take to actually succeed in the sector. But I think with our concerted efforts and our focus, we'll be able to galvanize African political leaders to set the framework that's going to be required for this industry to succeed. All right, thank you.